Hi, Naomi back for another video. I don't watch my videos. Yeah, I do watch some of them. But the last one, it's funny how the Spirit moves with us, right? And when I watched part of that video, it became apparent to me where the 10 tribes of Israel is. And it astounds me that it took me this long to understand what the Spirit was really trying to show me. So I think I'm going to call this video, Who Are the Tribes of Israel? Or Where Are the 10 Tribes of Israel? That they say is going to come back to Israel. And the Spirit showed me this, right? And I'm astounded that it took me this long for the Spirit to get this through my thick skull. So we're going to go in and we're actually going to retrieve the passage that I briefly described on the end of my last video, which is Isaiah 49. All right? And what gave me pause to really reconsider it is because I read a comment online the other day. And it was just such an ignorant comment myself. Was that Isaiah 49 is referencing a son. Well, with anybody with eyes to see and the Spirit to reason it out, you absolutely know it's referring to a daughter. And so we're going to go in and we're going to discuss why that's so and why I keep telling you that it's daughter Zion who sits to Christ's right hand. Okay? And we're going to look at those words a little bit closer. Hopefully I won't run out of time. I also wanted to show you my cute little books that I work in. I got this one just to a cheap store, and I love, this is a pinkish one. It's got a pinkish tone to it. And so of course I have to buy multiples when I like a book. This is the silver one, and I take notes in them, and I keep them down. You know, I have various size books. I love books. Right, this is one my sister gave me with a nice yellow leather cover on it. This is another one. Things are about to get really good. And so I take my notes down in them. And then, like I said, I have my bigger books that I use for study. But when I'm studying the Bible and I want to take notations down, I'll just use cute little books like these. Especially the ones that's really flexible. And I just wanted to share that with you because I love paper and pens. I'm a paper and pen lover by nature. Okay, so I realize how redundant that is. Now we're going to look at Isaiah 49, which I summed up briefly in my last video. So let's read it, okay? So we get the understanding of what it's really saying here. Okay, so Isaiah 49, verse 1. Listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken, ye people from far. The Lord hath called me from the womb, from the bowels of my mother hath not he made me, she. We're going to keep hitting on the Spirit. If you believe that God lied to you in this creation, and you're willing to take man's word over God's very creation of who births and who creates all things, which is the feminine, represented by the feminine. It's her womb. It's her seed. It's her humiliation in this case. It's her pain. And he begats? I don't think so. She begats. I begat my son. I know. I was there. I carried him for 9 months in my womb. I know. I begat him. He's mine. And then he begats? This is what this creation shows us. And yet you'll take mankind, men's words, who wrote this, he, in here, ignoring the feminine. And we've given you reasons as to why that was. Over God's very creation, which testifies to the Godhead as being male and female, and that it is the female half that creates life and gives life. All right? It's not he that does it. All right? And the Comforter. Oh, the Father and his children. No, his mother and her children. And that's what Isaiah 49 testifies to. All right? He doesn't shape children in the womb. She does. All right? And that ought to be just sense and reasoning with the Spirit. We have been taught to dismiss the feminine for far too long. And you really need to begin to put her back into it. in order to get your full understanding of what is about to play out. Now that's just simple reasoning. Now, Isaiah 49 again. The Lord hath called me from the womb, from the bowels of my mother hath she made mention of my name. The Spirit wrote the scriptures, it says. So what truth we're able to dig out is through the Spirit showing us what she actually intended it to read. The Spirit doesn't convolute truth. The Spirit doesn't present a truth that is difficult to understand. It's fallen man and that whore spirit that does that. So she says in Proverbs, she says, I've been forced to mingle my wine. So she's saying in order to find that truth in there, you're really going to have to dig, and you're really going to have to use me to do it, to find it. All right? So that's what we're looking at. And she has made mention of my name, verse 2. And she hath made my mouth like a sharp sword. She's put the word in my mouth. All right? Now she's told me, she gave me a sword in 2016. She showed me a flaming sword by the sun, the flaming sun, in 2016. And she asked me, she said, will you receive this sword unto yourself? Now I heard the Spirit say that to me. And I'm sharing that with you, not out of arrogance, because I do not believe I am the only one that was presented with a sword, representing the tongue, your words, your mouth, and that she was going to help me find this truth, this sword. There's 144,000 of us daughters that have swords, the truth, and you're not going to like what they have to say. So, like a sharp sword, in the shadow of her hand had she hid me. And she's hidden these 144,000. We're told about them in Psalm 83 and many, many other places. They're called her strong ones. You know, it's not easy to stand up and go against current theology as a daughter, especially as a woman. It's a very difficult thing to do. But she says, I'm calling forth my strong ones. And that means you pick your head up and you begin to dig for the truth in there for the feminine. You do not let men tell you who you are as a woman. The Creator says in Isaiah 28, you took the clay and the potter, and you flipped everything upside down, and you told the potter that she didn't understand anything, that the clay has more understanding than the potter does. Well, the clay don't have more understanding than the potter does. Potter, who the Creator. And she says, that's what you've tried to tell my daughters, that they have no understanding. It's you who have all the understanding. Well, it is the feminine that represents the Spirit, all right? And this entire chapter alludes to that. Actually, it does more than allude, tells you outright. So here we go. My mouth like a sharp sword, in the shadow of her hand has she hid me, and made me a polished shaft. In her quiver has she hid me. And said unto me, thou art my servant, O Israel, in whom I will be glorified. We're about to discover who Israel is. The 10 northern tribes and where they really went to. And this whole chapter actually tells us it once we understand and put it all together. Verse 4, then I said, I have labored in vain. I have spent my strength for naught, and in vain, yet surely my judgment is with the Lord, and my work is with my God. All right. Verse 5, and now saith the Lord that formed me from the womb to be her servant, to bring Jacob, I think it actually should be Israel, again to her, though Israel be not gathered. They're not gathered yet. Yet shall I be glorious in the eyes of the Lord, and my God shall be my strength. Verse 6. And she said, this is it. Watch this. Pay attention to this passage. We discussed it in the last one. And she said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob. Actually, it's Israel. All right? Israel has the idea of all 12. And to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth. So where did the 10 northern tribes go? Where? Now we need to understand certain components in that. And once we get those components down in our brain, then we weave the complete truth together of what this whole chapter is actually telling us. So verse 7, thus saith the Lord, the Redeemer of Israel, and her Holy One, to her whom man despises, to her whom the nation abhorreth, to a servant of rulers. Kings shall see and arise, and princes also shall worship, because of the Lord that is faithful and the Holy One of Israel, and she shall choose thee. Now, the heading at this next section of this chapter is called Zion will be restored. That's daughter Zion. Now, before I read this next chapter, I want you to understand something about Psalm 110, okay? Now, I'm just briefly going to explain it, but if you go to Psalm 110, it is an absolute pivotal chapter to understanding who is who, okay? So if you go to 110, it's not a long chapter. It's a very short chapter. There's only 7 verses in it. We'll go through it right quick. The Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. So what's the Lord's number there that's speaking to the Lord to her right hand? Well, the number is 3068, okay? And the Lord that sits to her right hand is 113. And that's typically Christ's number in the scriptures. And watch what she says, okay? She says unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. Verse 2. The Lord, this is 3068. This is Mother Yahweh saying, I will send the rod of your strength, of Christ's strength, out of Zion. All right? Now, we've already identified daughter Zion from putting 3 to 4 chapters together as Mother Yahweh's strong right arm, who she, by the way, she's also sitting to her right. Now, she says, I'll send the rod of thy strength out of Zion. Now rule thou in the midst of thine enemies. This is how Christ rules through the daughter of Zion, which is your Mount Zion. That smashes the end time rulers there on the toes in the book of Daniel chapter 2. Well, those are the daughters of Zion risen up, and they smash those toes and brings down this false image, which is a male image. It's the image of Baal. All right, once you get studying it. Thy people shall be willing in the day of thy power, and in the beauties of holiness. From the womb of the morning thou hast the dew of thy youth. This takes us back to the Song of Songs. Verse 4, the Lord hath sworn and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. That makes him a kingly priest. That's what she's saying. You're a kingly priest. Verse 5, the Lord at thy right hand. So there's a Lord sitting to Christ's right hand. Now, you know what the number is there for this Lord? Which is the strength out of Zion. This is daughter Zion's number. 136. Right? The Lord at thy right hand shall strike through kings in the day, it says, of his wrath. No, her wrath. This is his spirit manifesting in the earth. Verse 6, she shall judge among the heathen. She shall fill the places with the dead bodies. She shall wound the heads over many countries. She does this. The one that sits to Christ's right hand, which is number 136. And verse 7, she shall drink of the brook in the way, therefore she shall lift up the head. This is the great army of the daughters of Zion. And we discussed how they're also in view in Job 40 in a prior video. Now this was the verse I couldn't think of at the time that I wanted to throw in there. But it absolutely matches up with the behemoth, I believe. Trusteth that she can drink the river Jordan down in Job 40. Well, that verse is akin to it. She shall drink of the brook in the way, therefore shall she lift up the head. These are the daughters of Zion. Now, how do we know? They'll say, oh, it's Christ that's going to strike through. Well, you understand Christ and his spirit are one. Adam was called one, male and female, body and spirit. The female represents the spirit. She's the last thing created. She was the glory that crowns him. He's not crowned without his glory. You understand this? Now, for those who thinks it's Christ who strikes through his enemies, he literally is going to come. It's she that does this. And we identify these 3 numbers again, and they are called 3. All right? So we know they're separate and distinct 3. In Genesis 18, it says 3 angels appeared to Abraham. Well, it's these exact 3 numbers that appear again. Okay? 3068, 113, and 136. Now, 136 is daughter Zion. All right? Now, we've established this. We've discussed it. Okay? Now, Zion will be restored. Okay? That's what we're going to look at. And we just read that she'll be more than just a light unto the Israelites. And we discussed in the last video how in Zechariah 11 she breaks her covenant represented by these two staffs. And one has her name and one has the name of her inheritance, which is Israel on it, really, when you get understanding the whole thing. And she breaks them, signifying the spirit that broke her covenant with Israel. Now, let's understand, okay? And we'll read this. Verse 8 of Isaiah 49 says this, and the heading here says Zion will be restored. This is the daughters of Zion, the one daughter who is considered Christ's bride. You know, if you go and you look at when Moses went up to Mount Sinai, and he communed with the Spirit there, with God there, the number there is 136, his daughter Zion. And when he comes down, he has to put a veil on his face. And what that veil was representing is the bride. The spirit that was behind and operating behind Moses represents the bride of Christ, which is 136 there, which is daughter Zion. That's who he was communing with, he was speaking to. And it says his face shone, and he had to put a veil on. Well, what does a veil represent typically? Well, it typically represents a bride, typically. And so that's another allegory. So here we go, verse 8. Thus saith the Lord, in an acceptable time have I heard thee, and in a day of salvation have I helped thee. And I will preserve thee, and give thee for a covenant. What does God give in covenant? God gives the Spirit in covenant. Of the people to establish the earth, the cause to inherit the desolate heritages. So she's going to inherit all things that's desolate. Verse 9. That thou mayest say to the prisoners, go forth to them that are in darkness, show yourself, they shall feed in the ways, and their pasture shall be in all the high places. Verse 10. They shall not hunger nor thirst, neither shall the heat nor sun smite them. For she that hath mercy on them shall lead them, even by the springs of the water shall she guide them. Verse 11. And I will make all my mountains a way, and my highways shall be exalted. She's again talking about these daughters of Zion as being the gates that lift up their heads, right? They're your way out of here. They're your highway. They're your clean footpath. Verse 12, behold, these shall come from far and low, these from the north and from the west, and these from the land of Sinim. 13, sing, O heavens, and be joyful, O earth, and break forth into singing, O mountains, for the Lord has comforted her people, and will have mercy upon her afflicted. 14, now listen to what daughter Zion says here. But Zion says, the Lord has forsaken me. These are a lot of the time the women saying this. They feel this way. Every time we read this Bible written by men, it says he, and there's no feminine aspect except the negative one to always see. You begin to feel that you've been forsaken. And this also may represent the physical land of Israel, but I really believe it's spiritual that we're looking at. But Zion said, the Lord hath forsaken me, and my Lord hath forgotten me. The Lord there is actually 136. So we're looking at the separation again of the physical and the spiritual, which are destined to become one. So just as Father God manifested as a real man, as the Son, Christ, daughter Zion's going to manifest. Her spirit is actually going to manifest in the end of days as a physical being. All right? That's what we're being shown. Verse 15. Can a woman forget her sucking child, that she should not have compassion? It says on the son. We're talking clearly about the daughter here. This is a birthright in view. It does not belong to the son. It belongs to the daughters. This creation testifies to this as a truth, regardless of what men wrote in this. I'm going to take God's word on this one. So can a woman forget her sucking child, that she should not have compassion on the daughter of her womb? Yea, they may forget. Men have forgotten, women have forgotten. But mother hasn't forgotten, Mother Yahweh, Mother God. She says, yet will I not forget thee. I haven't forgotten my daughter, and what the wicked sons did to my righteous daughters. What you wicked sons still are doing to my righteous daughters, which is to blame them for everything, so you can exalt yourself and get tickled on your little ears. That's what she's saying here. She says, I haven't forgotten my righteous daughters. And where is she? It tells you what happened to her from the beginning after she was rejected. They want to believe everybody went bad, that all the daughters were of the whore spirit. Not true. That's not true. That's why we have two women in view in Galatians 4, one representing the righteous spirit from above. Well, how does a physical woman being named Sarah at this point represent the righteous spirit from above? Huh? Well, she's here. She's always been here. And that's the key of David that Christ come to claim. While fallen Adam claims that whore spirit, which is called the key of Solomon. Behold, I have graven thee upon the palms of my hand. Thy walls are continually before me. Well, you understand, she's the spirit that cut out Christ. She was the spirit behind him. And she says, my daughter is continually on the palms of my hand. You have to go a little bit grander in your thinking than what you've been doing. You've been looking at all in a physical context instead of taking it to the spiritual context. And you are to look at these words in an allegorical sense as well as a literal sense. Everybody says, oh no, you got to go literal. Not according to Galatians 4. It says these two women are an allegory. So it's telling you to look at things in an allegorical context where you are to look at them in an allegorical context. Now, where I went, they said, oh no, everything's literal. No, it ain't. No, it ain't. There's an allegorical overview, which is called your spiritual context in which you are to look at things. It's called growing up, getting off the milk and getting on the meat. So verse 17, thy children shall make haste. Thy destroyers and they that made thee waste shall go forth of thee. Lift up thine eyes round about, and behold, all these gather themselves together and come to thee. As I live, saith the Lord, thou shalt surely clothe them with them all, as with an ornament, and bind them on thee as a bride doeth. What? I thought it was a son in view here. No, it's the spirit that was rejected in the very beginning. That's the bride. And she's one. She's not many. Polygamy is not part of heaven. Part of God's heaven? Oh, no, it's part of Lucifer and part of fallen Adam. It's part of their death. Their fallen theology. In the beginning, it was 1-1. It wasn't one male and many brides, many of which are male. No. It's 1 and 1. That's what it's always been. And we know that the daughter is formed, or the bride is formed after. Okay? So we had the son 2,000 years ago. What do you suppose is coming into view now? Oh, well, we're all going to leave and nobody's going to have to know the daughter. No, that's the way you do leave, by knowing the daughter. Christ says you can blaspheme me, but you won't blaspheme my spirit when she manifests. You don't get away with blaspheming her. Nope. Excuse me, verse 18, lift up thine eyes round about, and behold, all these gather themselves together and come to thee. As I live, saith the Lord, thou shalt surely clothe them with them all as with an ornament, and bind them on thee as a bride. For thy waste and thy desolate places and the land of thy destruction shall even now be too narrow by reason of the inhabitants, and they that swallowed thee up shall be far away. So what's too narrow? What's too narrow? Verse 20, the children which thou shalt have after thou hast lost the other. All right? Pay attention to that verse. Shall say again in thine ears, the place is too strait for me. Give place to me that I may dwell. Verse 21, then shalt thou say in thine heart, who hath begotten me these, seeing I have lost my children? Right? And am desolate. What does it say? It says more of the desolate woman. The children of the desolate woman are more than of she who has a husband. So who's in view here? Come on. You think it's a man in view? Who have children? It was the spirit that lost her children because Adam chose the whore spirit over the righteous one. And this is mother who cut out Christ. And the daughter in the earth was always here. And she tells us this right here. So let's read that again. 21. Then shalt thou say in thine heart, Who hath begotten me these, seeing I have lost my children, and am desolate? A captive. She's a captive in the earth. And removing to and fro. Who moved to and fro? Well, if you hearken back to Leviticus 17, that Azazel goat, she-goat, had all the sins pronounced upon her head, and she roamed to and fro in a land not inhabited. That's what it says, and it meant the body. She'd been relegated to a desert land, is more or less your idea there. See, woman's been scapegoated for everything that Adam did. He dies, but she got the blame for it, you see. He let in the horror spirit, but she took the blame for it all, because they pointed at her. And so the righteous spirit ended up taking the blame for it all, which was represented by Eve, the woman who was set apart, which then began to represent Israel, who was again set apart. And now we're going to hit at it in a minute, okay? So she was a captive and removing to and fro. And who had brought up these? Who brought these children up? Behold, I was left alone. These, where had they been? Now watch, 22. Thus saith the Lord God. They'll tell you it's a man. No. This is Mother Yahweh, who cut out Christ. So the righteous spirit who is still here on earth could claim her children back to her. Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I will lift up mine hand to the Gentiles, and set up my standard to the people. And they shall bring thy sons in their arms, and thy daughters shall be carried upon their shoulders. Verse 23, And kings shall be thy nursing fathers, and their queens thy nursing mothers. They shall bow down to thee with their face towards the earth, and lick up the dust of thy feet. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord, for they shall not be ashamed that wait for me. Verse 24, Shall the prey be taken from the mighty, or the lawful captive delivered? Verse 24, But thus saith the Lord, Even the captives of the mighty shall be taken away, and the prey of the terrible shall be delivered. For I will contend with him, that's fallen Adam, and her, the horror spirit, that contendeth with thee. They pointed at her and they accused her in the courts of heaven. We've discussed this. And I will save thy children. Who saves us? It's the Spirit, and it is represented by a heifer. Guess who cleansed the temple in the Old Testament? It was the ashes of the red heifer. And Hebrews 9 goes on to tell us that that is the eternal Spirit, the mother. So she says, and I will save thy children. So who saves the children? It's the mother. And she hands them back to her daughter, who was rejected in the very beginning. Because Adam chose a covenant with the horror spirit. He didn't want one with the righteous one. And in Zechariah 11, she is found breaking her covenant, the righteous spirit, when they refuse to follow her on Mount Zion. She breaks her covenant. All right? And Mother reestablishes that covenant through Christ, the new Adam. Are we understanding it? Because it's all here. Once you take out the lying text out of here and you get the truth, you begin to understand the feminine and who she is and who she represents. Verse 26, And I will feed them that oppress thee with their own flesh, and they shall be drunk with their own blood as with sweet wine, and all flesh shall know that I am the Lord, and am thy Savior and thy Redeemer, the one mighty one of Israel. Now, Mother's looking for her mighty ones, her daughters of Zion. Now, you know, I had watched a video, it's been quite a while ago, and there was a question posed to many Jews in the land of Israel. Where are the 10 northern tribes, right, that are yet to be restored back to the land of Israel? Well, now, if we pay attention, and the answers varied, it was all over the board. But if we pay attention to what this told us, and what we came to understand that Mother said she was going to do with the daughters of Zion after the men of Israel rejected a covenant with them daughters, all right? And we've been discussing this. So if you want to know more in detail, you're going to have to go back and watch some of the videos, okay? But these righteous daughters eventually were cast, we're told. Where? Out into the fields of the Gentiles, all right? So we know that those 10 northern tribes our road in the fields of the Gentiles, don't we? Yet to be restored to Israel. Now that comes to be our understanding. But this is what we have failed to understand, okay? And this may be why they are struggling so hard for DNA information. They want you to, get a DNA test so you can find out your heritage and all that. And they're going to make light of it. While at the same time, we begin to understand just the seriousness of what our genetics really are entailing. But if we hearken to this, what does it say? Mother Yahweh says to her daughter of Zion here, after she's broken her covenant, right? We see that in Zechariah 11. And she casts those 30 pieces of silver to the potter. That's to Mother. And Mother promises her this in verse 6 of Isaiah 49. And she said, not he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant, to raise up the tribes, it's got of Jacob, of Israel, and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee a light, for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the ends of the earth. Now, what do we know of the nation of Israel? Well, what we begin to understand is it was Eve's seed that was blessed. All right, it says the woman's seed would be blessed. And what we come to understand through our studies, that all of the Gentile nations that surrounded Israel were considered the descendants of Adam and that whore spirit. That's what they're considered, the descendants of Adam and the whore spirit. Israel was the one nation that was representing Eve's seed. All right? So, if you understand Israel, in order to consider yourself an Israelite, you had to be able to trace your lineage through whose side? Not the son's side. It was through the woman's side that your heritage was claimed. Now, if we understand, and Mother says this in Psalms 106 to the Israelites after they began to submit to Baal, which is this false image of a male god, right? Which is that image in Daniel, which we've talked about. They began to cast off the daughters of Zion, because you see, Israel's rulership came through the daughters of Zion, whereas these surrounding nations bowed to a false image, a male god image. That's what they upheld. Their kings were their gods, more or less. When you get studying where all these names derive from, you come back to the fact that it derives from kings, right? Who wanted to be exalted as gods in the earth. These men who had also made a covenant with these whore spirits that they promised to exalt on Mount Zion. And then these whores promised, you exalt me on Mount Zion, which were the descendants of Lucifer, which is a she, not a he, which he made a covenant with. I believe Cain and Abel came from two different lineages. They did not come from one. They came from two. So in one sense, when I discussed Genesis 6, the daughters of Cain, that was right. They were the daughters of Lucifer, really, and fallen Adam. And these sons of Seth, which were supposedly the righteous daughters of Eve's side, representing the righteous spirit, decided they were going to turn and make a covenant with them on Mount Zion. And these daughters said, okay, you exalt us up to Mount Zion, and we'll make laws that makes you gods under the laws. And that's exactly what we see with the Mount Zion, angels on Mount Zion, and that story in the book of Enoch in Genesis 6. That's really what we're looking at. But Eve's seed, they won't tell you none of her daughters that she had. And it's clear that her lineage had to carry through the daughters. It's like Noah starting the world over. Sorry, you can't start the world over without a righteous daughter who had to descend from Eve to carry on the righteous seed, which was promised to the woman. You carry this heritage through the woman's line. You do not carry it through the man's line. So don't tell me they erased the woman out of there. She absolutely mattered. She was vital, and she was not carrying descendancy of the giants like they want to toss her aside. Mother would have had a pure line come from Eve, and they represented the nation of Israel. And when Israel, the men of Israel, began to cast off these righteous daughters as their rulers, as we already discussed in a prior video. She cast them out in the fields of the Gentiles. Now, you understand where Israel is now, right? Out in the fields of the Gentiles. And you're only going to trace their heritage through who? Not the sons, the daughters. And there's 10 tribes out here in this world. And you're not going to follow it through the sons. You're going to follow it through your mitochondrial DNA, the woman's DNA. And it's going to have to come through the righteous DNA. But you see how she picks up the Gentiles as she goes, right? You will not only now be a light unto the Israelites, you will also be a light unto the Gentiles. Now she gets to claim them as her birthright. They're all her children. That's what this is showing us. Isn't this amazing? It's amazing. But when you factor out completely the feminine and her heritage and what was rightfully hers in the beginning, you're missing the whole picture. You're not going to get the correct theology. You're not. And Mother says, I'm going to restore them back to Israel. So if there's 144,000 daughters, that represents the daughters of Zion that you see standing on Mount Zion in Revelations 14:4 with no guile in their mouth. That means the horror spirits teaching and fallen Adams. They're holding the teachings of heaven. The righteous spirit that's always been here. Always been here. She was rejected in the very beginning, representing that scapegoat that got cast out into the desert lands. She's here now, right? And she's manifesting in these daughters who she claims as her own. They were always hers because they were cast out in the fields of the Gentiles. And now she can claim the Gentiles because of it. So you see, her birthright has grown. So they all belong to her. And she will clothe them. Her children, they belong to her, to the Spirit. They don't belong to the Son. Well, they do now. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. They want to say he. These belong to the daughter, which represents the Spirit, which represents daughter Zion, which we've been discussing. Okay? Now I know I want to say more, but I'm drawing a blank on it. All right? But we're understanding where the 10 tribes of Israel now are. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So that means to me, and I haven't thoroughly thought about this. I just wanted to tell you what the Spirit's been showing me. I'm learning as I go, all right? Which means you're going to have to make corrections as you go. But you got to let the Spirit teach you. You got to let her do that. That means that while there's 120,000 of these daughters of Zion out here in the midst of the Gentiles, it means that there's 24,000 daughters of Zion still in Israel. You see, so she claims Israel as her birthright, and she claims the Gentiles as her birthright. She gets them all, right? And that was that 30 pieces of silver that Mother told her to cast to the potter's feet, to the potter's house. And she said, don't worry, we'll remake it. And her intention was to make a much grander mantle. Now, in one sense, a mantle is this body that she wears. She can now wear this body because of what Christ did on the cross, right? But she can also wear it because those daughters of Zion were cast out into the fields of the Gentiles, right? And in the end of days, the Spirit actually manifests in these daughters who really descend from the original daughters of Zion that were cast out into the fields of the Gentiles. And though they're Gentiles, they actually descend from the daughters of Zion. That's what it's saying in that verse. It's just so amazing. And, you know, for those who think I'm crazy, for saying that the land masses looks like it's coming back together and she's actually making a way for us to go back to Israel, it's beginning to make more and more sense. Because when you go in and you study Isaiah chapter 41, 42, 43, 44, them chapters, she actually alludes to the fact that she's going to dry up oceans. And sometimes they're called rivers and seas. But she brings the oceans and the seas in. She says, I'm going to dry them up. I'm going to I can do these things? And in the days of Peleg, when the land was divided, it was like 200 years it took to divide the land masses apart, to separate the land masses. So she can do this relatively quick, should she decide to do it. Now, I find that fascinating. So it's something you can go in and look at if you determine to do so. The other thing I wanted to look at is actually where the name Israel actually comes from. And when you get looking it up in your words, for me, I go to Bible Hub often, that the name Israel derives from two words, Sarah and El. Well, El means God, and Sarah, we're told, means princess. Well, Sarah's seed would have been represented by the nation of Israel, whereas it says Abraham's promised to be a father of many nations, right? Well, he was promised to be a father of many nations because, again, he had a covenant with that Holy Spirit. Though he promised to be in covenant with the righteous spirit, and Sarah said, "Let God judge between me and thee," because he brought home a woman who he knew full well what he was doing. I don't care what anybody says. It attests to this when Sarah says, "Let God judge between me and thee," what you were really up to. See, he didn't believe that Sarah was going to provide an heir. And the law at that time, if I've got it right, and I'm not saying 100% on this, was at that time that if a woman had failed to provide a male heir to her husband, he had the right to get rid of her. Now, Sarah was an old woman at this time, and here comes Abraham with a young woman in the house. Now, what do you think's going to hit her brain? He's preparing to get rid of me. So she says, "Fine. Take her to bed with you. You want that tramp? Fine. You want to send it by her? Fine." And then later on she says, "Let God judge between me and thee." God knows what was on your heart when you brought her through the door. God knows what was on mine. And he does it again when he says, "Let Ishmael live." He's saying, there's the son right there, provided by me. And mother, I believe, chastised him at that time. I told you it would be through Sarah, the righteous spirit's descendants. You see? You see what's really been going on? So Abraham became a father of many nations because he took unto him that whore spirit, that harlot. She wasn't a harlot, but you know what I'm saying, based on what we've been studying. Whereas Sarah was the lineage that Israel could claim. Sarah. And so Sarah also, why she's called, actually her name is derived from chief. She's actually the chief. She's the principal. I don't care what anybody says. You can go Michael. It's she who is like God, that's about to appear and stand up for the nation of Israel. The Spirit has to manifest. That's why Christ says, you can get away blaspheming me, the Son. You're not going to blaspheme my Spirit. Because without her righteous truth, you won't stand on Mount Zion. You won't do it. She's my Spirit manifesting in the earth, and she's always been here. And she's going to manifest in these daughters physically. Physically. And she's not only Israel, but she's part of the church as well. Right? Yeah. But they're all female. And there's only one that is considered the actual bride, and that's daughter Zion. Okay. Now, Sarah L. It means God wrestles. And we've discussed how the daughter Zion is called the strong right arm of God, therefore called God. So God wrestles? That's funny. You wrestle with your arm, don't you? It's pretty cool. But that's exactly what it's all telling you, whether you know it or not. And I also made a video a while ago about, it was called Woman's Mantle, The Great Shaking, and what was it called? The Rising Up of the Daughters of Zion. And I talked about how it was absolutely these daughters that's appointed to deliver the burden. Well, I just gonna give you a heads up here. Go watch a game trailer. It's called Stranding, okay? And the main character in it, his name is Sam, and he's played by Norman, I think his name's Reedus. And he's in a show called The Walking Dead, I guess. And he's a very popular character. But he's in this movie trailer. And it's Death Stranding. And it hasn't come out yet. But it's got a lot of people excited. A lot of gamers excited about this movie trailer called Death Stranding. Well, it absolutely backs up my video that I just said. Woman's Mantle, The Great Shaking, and The Return of the Daughters of Zion. And it has men trying to deliver the burden, is really what it's about. And everybody's trying to figure out what this game trailer is all about. Well, he has a baby with him. The idea is that men are trying to birth themselves, right? They're literally trying to birth themselves. And then in one part you see these disembodied, smoky kind of spirits with these long tails. They're umbilical cords. Mother says, don't worry, you're a burden to me. I won't deliver you. I'll cut you off. And that's what it's showing you. These cut off spirits, these disembodied spirits. And now it's upon these men who had covenants with these horror spirits to deliver themselves. And they can't deliver the burden. I know, it sounds crazy. Go watch the trailer. Go watch it. It'll blow your mind. It blew mine when I seen it. So there we go. And what does Mother say? We talked about the Baal image and how Baal actually means your husband, means Lord and Master. And she says in Hosea 2, they got a man speaking here like it's a man speaking. It's Mother speaking to her daughter. Just like she spoke to her son, she speaks to her daughter. And she says, I'm going to remove your name for your husband out of your mouth. And he's not going to be called Lord and Master anymore. He's going to be called your husband. I'm going to remove the name Baal out of your mouth, she said. And that Baal is a false image as man being God, Lord and Master. And she says, I'll take that name out of your mouth, Baal, and you will call him husband, not Lord and Master, because your husband isn't your Lord and your Master. He's your husband. And she says in Jeremiah 23, you forgot my name for Baal, who I called Baal. Why do you think they're resurrecting these arches of Baal? They're trying to give power to men as your Lord and Master, and they are not. It is the spirit that governs the body, and this is considered her birthright. And this mantle may as well represent the physical mantle of man that she wears, right? That's the spirit that worked behind Moses. That's why he wears this veil representing the bride that worked behind this physical mantle of a male. It's not difficult to understand once you go back through and you watch all the videos and you pick the threads up that you can pick up. And I want to tell you something else. It's also in the Goddard tunnel opening. All of this is in the Goddard tunnel opening. It is. I don't care what anybody says. Once you get your allegorical overview, you understand. They're carrying these branches around with them everywhere. Well, that's the daughter. They're trying to claim lineage to the daughter. The daughters of Zion. That's what they're trying. It's a spell. It's a ritual that they're carrying out. And in the end, you see this she-goat benevolently walking away with the horns of that ram, that man that danced around supposedly as Christ. You see the horror spirit saying, well, we're going to claim Christ too. We're going to claim the second Adam too as ours. It's a ritual. Go watch it. It's called the Goddard Tunnel Opening. It's all a ritual. And the long-haired goats dancing around? Come on. Get a clue. Bird in a Box. Have you watched the trailer of Bird in a Box starring Sandra Bullock? I like Sandra Bullock. I like watching movies. Just because I like watching the allegorical overview on them. Because if you pay attention to what singers will tell you, as well as scriptwriters will tell you, what's the first thing they say? They say, oh, it's my craft. It's my craft. Well, how do they craft? They craft through words. What are we told in the Bible? There's power in words. Everything that they do it's a spell at you. Their movies are spell. Their songs are spells, craftily, very, very cleverly written. So Bird in a Box, what does she say at one point? She says, don't take my children! Oh, They were never hers. You see? Quiet place. What is that really all about? It's about trying to take away your voice. It's trying to remove your voice from you so you have no power. Basically, that's what it's showing you. So those are just some things that you can look into. I think I discussed everything. I was going to discuss the derivatives on demon and where that derives from. It's pretty easy. Demon, daemon, dolmen. So when you hit that word dolmen, right, and you'll find that you can find that word on your interlinear in connection to demon, dolmen. Well, when you understand that a doe, what's a doe? Well, they'll say it's a female deer, but in the Middle East they hunt a goat called the ibex, and it's a huge goat, wild goat that's always existed there. And they hunt these ibexes, and the female is called a doe. And we know that Lucifer loves to counterfeit. All right? So she'll show you the image of a goat. And Mother Yahweh refers to the mountains right now that are ruling this world as he-goats. Okay? So there's a distinct difference between the he-goats and she-goats. But even, the she-goats, they'll try, these daughters of Zion that fell are still represented as she-goats. So, Dolmen Demon. What's a demon? A disembodied spirit. So what's these disembodied spirit? Well, it's these horror spirits that worked behind fallen Adam, that made a covenant with him, that are now disembodied spirits. So I find it interesting, doe man, right? Because your ibex, which is a goat, would have been called a doe. And we know of the she-goat covenant in Genesis 15:9. She's part of this covenant, which represents your daughters of Zion. We know that to be true when we study Song of Songs. The Shulamite is shepherding a little flock of she-goats, which we then come to realize are called the daughters of Zion, which is what we've all been discussing. So that's it. I think I pretty much summed up what I wanted to share with you today. I hope I shared it in the way that I wanted to. But Isaiah 49 does not have a son in view. It is the daughter, Zion, being given back her rightful birthright. And this spirit that was disembodied, which we'll go back to and read briefly 21, verse 21 of Isaiah 49, it says, "Then shalt thou say in thine heart, Who hath begotten me these? Seeing I have lost my children and am desolate, a captive, and removing to and fro," that's the spirit. "And who hath brought up these? Behold, I was left alone. These, where had they been?" So these are the children being restored to these daughters of Zion, who are literally manifesting in the flesh now in the end of days. We don't know who we are. We really don't. But if you let the Spirit lead you, she will begin to show you who you really are. And she'll show it through your visions. She'll show it through your dreams. She'll show it through your numerology. And she'll show it through the Word. If you are willing to go in and begin to understand the feminine. And that's what I did not understand when I began my study. I'm like, Lord, who am I in you? Because this does not tell me. It wants to make everything a he. When this very creation, God's creation, testifies that's a lie. So God says, the Spirit said to me a while ago, why ain't my children growing up? Right? Why are they still acting as if they're children subject to the elemental principles of this world? She said, why are not my children growing up? Why are they still drinking milk? Why aren't they going for the meat? It's time they grew up. And that means, as a daughter, picking your head up and understanding who you are in God. And that mother is waiting for you to pick your head up. And she calls you one of her strong ones. She calls these daughters that actually manifest in the flesh in the end of days out of the church, called the daughters of Zion, which out of one is going to claim this birthright. That's what it's saying. So I hope I wasn't too angry on that. I'm not angry today. It's actually, you know what it's doing here today? It's actually snowing a little bit here today. And we love that for Christmas, don't we? After Christmas, it can all go away. So Anyway, I love my brothers and sisters. I hope I showed it to you in such a manner that you can understand what I'm saying. I love my brothers. We need our brothers. We need our righteous brothers who are like Christ. If you are living like Christ, then live like Christ. And hold up your sisters, who is the Spirit manifesting. Alright? We need our brothers to stand beside us. You cannot be found exalting a whore spirit. You know what it says? Know ye not he that is joined to a harlot, and it's talking about the whore spirit, is one. You must join with us, the righteous spirit. Know ye not that he that is joined to the righteous spirit is one? That's me saying it. Because that's what it's saying. And we're your spirit. We're your counterparts. We're Christ's counterpart. There's one of us that is Christ's counterpart. One of us. We don't know which one, but we know one of us, daughters of Zion, that is manifest in the Spirit, which we are told His glory is going to manifest in this earth. And you have to stand up for the righteous spirit. If you are of Christ, you stand up for the truthful spirit, which is now manifesting in the earth. This is your job too. This is not just on the daughters of Zion. This is on the sons to support us while we do this. So again, I love my brothers and sisters. I hope you are beginning to understand this theology. I would recommend you go in, you watch all the videos, and pick up the threads that you can pick up. And to my sister Nick, I love ya. And thanks for watching my video and just being the great encouragement that I need you to be. I hope the good Lord blesses all of you